All right, so you want to dive into the world of college football rivalries, the kind that makes fans, lose sleep for weeks leading up to the big game.
Yeah.
We're going to do a deep dive into some of the best matchups out there.
Okay.
And we're going to be using insights from the top 10s list to really understand what makes these rivalries tick.
Great.
So get ready for some serious trash talk, legendary players and traditions that go back, generations.
Yeah, what's really interesting about this list is that it's not just a ranking.
Right,
It
yes.
reveals the heart and soul of college football. We're not just talking about wins and losses, but about the passion, the history that makes these games so much bigger than just a game on the field.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in with the heavy hitters, the top 3 rivalries that consistently top the charts.
Okay.
First up, we've got the game Ohio State versus Michigan.
Yeah, this is a rivalry that goes back to 1897.
Wow.
You've got two powerhouse programs constantly battling for Big Ten dominance. Think about the weight of history. The legendary coaches, the iconic players who've worn those jerseys. It all adds up to this incredible sense of anticipation and intensity.
And it's not just about what happens on the field, right?
Right.
This rivalry impacts everything in those states, families, communities, even politics.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like the game is woven into the very fabric of life in Ohio and Michigan.
That's absolutely right. It's more than just a game. It's a cultural touchstone.
Yeah.
But speaking of intense rivalries that go beyond the game itself,
Okay.
how about the Iron Bowl?
Ooh.
Auburn versus Alabama.
Now, I've heard some stories about this one. Fans refusing to speak to each other.
Oh, yeah.
Even family members.
Yeah.
Is it really as intense as people say?
Let's just say it's not for the faint of heart.
Okay.
Think about this.
Right.
The state of Alabama is deeply divided along socioeconomic lines.
Okay.
You've got the industrial north and the agricultural south. And that division plays out in the Iron Bowl.
Interesting.
It's a clash of identities, and the passion runs deep, sometimes too deep.
Oh, wow.
There are stories about ruined marriages, property damage, even violence over this game.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
It really shows you how deeply these rivalries can run.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the game with its historical significance
Right.
and the Iron Bowl with its intense cultural backdrop. What's next on our list of top rivalries?
Let's head over to Texas and Oklahoma for the Red River Showdown.
Okay.
This one is all about spectacle and tradition.
Okay.
Since 1900, they've been playing on neutral ground in Dallas, with the stadium perfectly split between Texas and Oklahoma fans.
Oh, wow.
It's like two worlds colliding, a sea of burnt orange against a sea of crimson.
And it's not just the game itself.
Right.
The Red River Showdown is famous for its pre-game festivities, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what kind of things are we talking about?
You've got the State Fair of Texas happening right next door,
Oh, fun.
adding this whole other layer of excitement.
Oh.
Imagine thousands of fans making their way to the Cotton Bowl, the smell of corn dogs and funnel cakes in the air,
Oh, yeah.
the energy building as the two sides meet in the stadium.
Wow.
It's an experience unlike any other.
So it sounds like it's more than just a game. It's an event,
Yeah,
a cultural phenomenon.
it really is.
But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about a rivalry that's marked by a very different kind of energy.
Okay.
Army versus Navy.
This rivalry is all about respect and tradition.
Okay.
You've got future military leaders battling it out on the field, representing the two branches of the armed forces.
Right.
These players are literally putting their lives on the line for their country.
Wow.
So the game takes on a whole new level of meaning.
It's interesting how this rivalry manages to be both fiercely competitive and incredibly respectful at the same time.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
You see it in the prisoner exchange,
Okay.
where cadets from both sides are released back to their own cheering sections after spending the week on the enemy side.
What?
And the shared singing of the alma mater.
Mm-hmm.
It's a powerful symbol of unity and respect that transcends the rivalry itself.
Yeah, it's really a testament to the power of sports to bring people together,
Yeah.
even in the midst of competition.
Absolutely.
Now let's dive into some rivalries that tap into deeper cultural divides, starting with Florida versus Georgia,
Okay.
the world's largest outdoor cocktail party.
This one is all about Southern pride pageantry and, of course, some good old-fashioned football.
Right.
But there's also this fascinating debate about the historical record. Both sides claim to have the edge in the rivalry,
Okay.
and the way they interpret history becomes part of the game itself.
So it's not just about winning the game,
Right.
it's about owning the narrative.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting.
And speaking of complex rivalries,
Okay.
we have to talk about the Holy War
Right.
Utah versus BYU.
I've heard this one is unique because of the religious aspect, right?
Yes, you've got Utah with a predominantly secular fan base,
Right.
and BYU representing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay.
So the rivalry taps into this larger cultural divide,
Mm-hmm.
raising questions about faith, identity, and belonging.
It sounds like it's more than just a game, it's a reflection of broader societal
It
tensions.
really is.
But for all the talk about differences, I've also heard that there's a surprising amount of respect between the two fan bases.
That's true.
Okay.
While the rivalry can get heated,
Mm-hmm.
there's also an underlying sense of community.
Right.
After all, these are two schools from the same state,
Yeah,
sharing a passion for football
Mhm.
and a commitment to their respective values.
that's a great point. It's a reminder that even in the most heated rivalries, there can be common ground.
Absolutely.
Now, are you ready to explore some rivalries that divide entire states?
Oh yeah, bring it on.
Let's start with Oregon versus Oregon State,
Okay.
the Civil War.
All right.
I've heard people say that this rivalry splits the state right down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really the case?
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
You've got the urban, more liberal Portland area rooting for the Ducks,
Okay.
and the more rural, conservative parts of the state aligning with the Beavers.
Interesting.
It's a microcosm of the larger political and cultural divides we see across the country.
Wow. It's amazing how these football rivalries can become so deeply intertwined with regional identities.
Yeah.
Speaking of intense state rivalries, we can't forget about Clemson versus South Carolina.
Oh, the Palmetto Bowl.
The Palmetto Bowl.
Yeah.
So what's that one all about?
In South Carolina, you're either a Tiger or a Gamecock, and that rivalry is a constant presence.
Really?
Think about it.
Okay.
Your neighbor, your coworker, the person you see at the grocery store.
Yeah.
They could be wearing the opposing team's colors.
Oh, wow.
It's this constant reminder of the rivalry,
Yeah.
even outside of football season.
It sounds like it's woven into the fabric of daily life in South Carolina.
It really is.
And for our last state rivalry, let's head over to the border war.
All right.
Missouri versus Kansas.
Now, this one goes all the way back to the Civil War.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
You've got two states with a long history of conflict,
Okay.
and that history plays out on the football field.
Wow.
The intensity is palpable, and the atmosphere is electric.
Yeah.
It's not just about winning, it's about claiming bragging rights for your side of the border.
Okay, so we've explored some intense in-state rivalries.
Yes, we have.
Now let's step outside state lines and look at a clash of cultures.
Okay.
USC versus Notre Dame.
This is where you see two very different worlds colliding.
Okay.
California cool versus Midwestern tradition.
Right.
Hollywood glitz versus blue-collar grit.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a matchup that captures the imagination of fans nationwide.
And let's not forget the history.
Yeah.
These two programs have been battling it out since 1926,
Wow.
producing some of the biggest names in college football history.
It's a rivalry that's built on tradition, respect, and a shared commitment to excellence.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of new rivalries on the rise, how about UCF versus USF?
I've heard that this one, though, relatively young, is already incredibly intense.
It's a classic case of two schools in close proximity
Right.
vying for dominance.
Yeah.
You've got the Knights of UCF, the up-and-coming program making a name for themselves,
Okay.
and the Bulls of USF, the established power, trying to maintain their hold on the state.
It sounds like a recipe for an epic showdown.
Yeah.
And for our final rivalry in this segment, let's head over to the AIM-AC, where we find NIU versus Toledo.
Now, this one might not have the national recognition of some of the others,
Yeah.
but it's a fierce battle that often gets overlooked.
Okay.
These two teams consistently compete at the top of their conference,
Mm-hmm.
and the games are always close and hard-fought.
Yeah, it's a reminder that there are great rivalries happening all across the country, not just in the Power 5 conferences.
That's right.
But before we move on to some of the other amazing matchups on this list,
Yeah.
let's take a step back and consider what makes these rivalries so special.
Well, I think it's the way they connect us to something bigger than ourselves, to history, to tradition, to a shared sense of identity.
Yeah.
They provide a way for us to express our passions, our loyalties, and our sense of belonging.
That's beautifully said. And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore that idea further. We'll delve into the stories behind the rivalries, the moments that define them, and the factors that make them so enduring.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned.
Looking forward to it. All right, so we've explored some of the biggest names in college football rivalries, but what really makes one rivalry stand out from the others?
Yeah, what elevates it to, legendary status?
That's a great question. It's like trying to bottle lightning. right?
Right.
You can point to certain ingredients, history, passion, tradition,
Yeah.
but there's also this intangible element,
Hmm.
this spark that makes a rivalry truly special.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a combination of factors, each adding its own unique flavor to the mix.
Okay.
So let's break down some of those key ingredients. First up, historical significance. Some rivalries have been brewing for over a century.
Wow.
Think about Harvard versus Yale or Army versus
All
Navy.
right.
They've witnessed wars, social movements, and the evolution of the game itself.
It's like stepping into a time machine, right?
Yeah.
Connecting with generations of fans who've experienced those same heart-stopping moments, those same gut-wrenching defeats,
Mm-hmm.
those same celebrations that shook the stadium.
It's about carrying the torch, being part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
But history alone doesn't make a rivalry great.
Right.
You need that intensity, that edge of your seat feeling that anything can happen.
Okay.
Think about Alabama versus Auburn, where the rivalry runs so deep it splits families.
Oh, wow.
Or Florida versus Florida State, where the trash talk is legendary and the games are always a battle.
It's that feeling where you can't even look away for a second, right?
Yeah.
Because every snap could change the entire course of the game.
Right.
And maybe even the next year's bragging rights.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the fans, right? What about the players and coaches who leave their mark on these rivalries?
Oh, absolutely. Think about Ohio State versus Michigan,
Okay.
where coaches like Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler became icons, their personalities woven into the fabric of the rivalry.
Wow.
Or Miami versus Florida State, where players like Deion Sanders and Michael Irvin brought a level of swagger and showmanship that added fuel to the fire.
They become larger-than-life figures, almost mythical in a way.
Yeah.
Their stories passed down through generations of fans.
That's amazing.
But sometimes it's more than just the game itself.
Right.
Some rivalries tap into deeper cultural currents, adding layers of complexity and meaning that go beyond sports.
Exactly. Look at Utah versus BYU.
Right.
The Holy War,
Yeah.
where religious beliefs and cultural identity become intertwined with the game.
Yeah.
Or Missouri versus Kansas, the border war,
Mhm.
where historical tensions and regional pride add an extra layer of intensity.
So these rivalries become a microcosm of larger societal divides, a way for communities to express their identities and values.
That's a great way to put it.
It's fascinating how these games can be about so much more than just what happens on the field.
Yeah,
They reflect our history, our culture, our values.
absolutely.
But let's talk about the game day experience itself, the atmosphere, the
Yeah.
traditions, the pageantry.
Mm-hmm.
These all contribute to the magic of a rivalry, don't they?
Absolutely. Think about the Red River Showdown,
Okay.
with its split stadium and the sea of burnt orange and crimson creating this visually stunning spectacle,
Wow.
or the pageantry of Army versus Navy, with the cadets marching onto the field,
Mm-hmm.
the flyovers, the shared singing of the alma mater.
Right.
It's a celebration of tradition, patriotism, and sportsmanship.
It's about the tailgates, the chants,
Right.
the rival fans trying to outdo each other with creative signs and outrageous costumes.
Okay.
It's about being part of something bigger than yourself, something that brings people together, even if it's in a shared sense of rivalry.
That's right.
But at the end of the day, it all comes down to the game itself, right?
Of course. The on-field competition is the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
Some rivalries are known for their consistently close games. Those nail-biting finishes that leave you breathless, wondering how it all happened.
Right.
Think about games like the Kick Six in the 2013 Iron Bowl,
Oh, yeah.
or the play in the 1982 Cal-Stanford game.
I remember that one.
Those moments become part of the rivalry's lore, talked about for years to come, fueling the passion and intensity surrounding the matchup.
It's about the legendary players who rise to the occasion,
Right?
the unlikely heroes who make their mark,
Yeah.
the heartbreaking defeats that leave you wondering, what if, and the triumphant victories that make all the pain worthwhile.
It's an emotional roller coaster.
It really is. It's about the unpredictability of it all, the feeling that anything can happen when these two teams meet.
You hit the nail on the head. It's that element of surprise.
Right.
The unexpected twists and turns that keep us coming back for more.
Yeah.
But there's one more ingredient I think is essential.
Okay, what's that?
The X factor.
The actor.
That's something special, that intangible quality that you can't quite put your finger on,
Right.
but you know it when you see it.
Yeah, it's like magic, right?
It is.
You can analyze all the stats, dissect all the strategies, but sometimes a rivalry transcends logic and becomes something greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. It's that feeling of destiny,
Yeah.
the sense that these two teams are meant to clash, that their paths are forever intertwined.
Right.
And that's what makes a college football rivalry truly great.
So with all those elements in mind, are you ready to dive into some specific stories,
Oh, yeah.
some unforgettable moments, some legendary players who've shaped these rivalries into what they are today?
Absolutely. Let's crack open the history books, put on our storytelling hats, and relive some of the most epic battles in college football history. Get ready for part 3, where we'll explore the heart and soul of these rivalries, the stories that will make you laugh, cry, and maybe even shed a tear of pride for your favorite team.
All right, so we've talked about the ingredients that make a college football rivalry great. The history, the passion, the traditions.
Right.
Now let's bring those rivalries to life with some stories.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll uncover the moments, the players, the twists of fate that have made these matchups legendary.
Let's do it.
Let's start with a rivalry that embodies everything we've been talking about, the game.
Okay.
Ohio State versus Michigan. It's more than just a game.
No.
It's practically a religion in those states.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got two powerhouse programs consistently ranked among the nation's elite battling for Big Ten dominance year after year.
Yeah, think back to the 10-year war.
Okay.
From 1969 to 1978, when Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler turned this rivalry into a personal duel.
Wow.
Their personalities, their coaching styles, everything about them clashed.
Really?
It's like watching a chess match unfold on the football field.
And the intensity wasn't just on the field, right? I've heard stories about Hayes refusing to even say the word Michigan,
Oh, yeah.
referring to them only as that team up north.
That's right. The rivalry became so intense that it impacted everything. Recruiting, media coverage, even fan interactions.
Wow.
It was more than just a game. It was a battle for the soul of college football in the Midwest.
And that intensity continues today. Every year, fans on both sides circle the game on their calendars,
Oh, yeah.
knowing that bragging rights, state pride, and maybe even a shot at a national championship are on the line.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of rivalries that go beyond the game itself,
Okay.
let's talk about the Holy War, Utah versus BYU.
This one is unique because it intersects with religion and cultural identity
Right.
in a way that few other rivalries do.
Absolutely. You've got Utah with its predominantly secular fan base representing the state's more liberal urban population.
Right.
And then you have BYU, the flagship institution of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints,
Okay.
drawing its support from a more conservative religious community.
So the game becomes a symbolic battleground, a way for these two communities to express their identities and values on a national stage.
Exactly. And the intensity is amplified by the fact that these two schools are located just 45 miles apart.
Wow.
It's a rivalry that's deeply personal, deeply ingrained in the fabric of life in Utah.
Now let's head south for a rivalry that's all about spectacle, tradition, and maybe just a little bit of excess.
All right.
The Red River Showdown, Texas versus Oklahoma.
This one takes place every year at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, right in the middle of the State Fair of Texas. You've got the Midway, the corn dogs, the livestock shows,
Right.
and then you've got two of the most storied programs in college football history going head-to-head in a stadium split perfectly down the middle between burnt orange and crimson.
Oh, wow.
It's more than just a game. It's a cultural event. You've got generations of families making the pilgrimage to Dallas every year, tailgating all day, soaking up the atmosphere, and then witnessing a rivalry that often determines the Big 12 champion.
And speaking of traditions, we can't forget about Army versus Navy.
Right.
A rivalry that's built on respect, honor, and a shared commitment to serving our country.
Is a special one.
Yeah, this one transcends the typical win or lose mentality.
Absolutely.
It's about something bigger than the game itself.
It's about witnessing future military leaders battling it out on the field, knowing that one day they might be fighting side by side to defend our nation.
Wow.
It's about seeing the prisoner exchange a tradition that symbolizes the respect and camaraderie between these two branches of the armed forces.
And it's about hearing the roar of the crowd as both teams stand side by side singing their respective alma maters at the end of the game. A powerful display of unity and patriotism.
Now, for a rivalry steeped in Southern charm, tailgating extravagance, and some truly memorable moments,
Okay.
we have to talk about the world's largest outdoor cocktail party,
Okay.
Florida versus Georgia.
This one takes place every year in Jacksonville, Florida, and it's known for its festive atmosphere, its neutral site location, and its back-and-forth nature on the field.
Yeah, think about moments like Lindsey Scott's 93-yard touchdown catch in 1980.
Wow.
That gave Georgia the win and propelled them to a national championship or Florida's dominance in the 1990s under Steve Spurrier
Right.
when they turned this rivalry into a gator feeding frenzy.
And for a rivalry that's produced some of the biggest names and most electrifying moments in college football history, we have to mention Miami versus Florida State.
Oh yeah, this rivalry defined the 1980s and 1990s with both programs consistently competing for national championships. You've got legendary players like Deion Sanders, Michael Irvin, Warren Sapp, and Jameis Winston all leaving their mark on this epic clash.
And who could forget the infamous wide right games? When Miami's hopes for national titles were dashed by missed field goals against their arch rivals.
Oh man.
It's the kind of heartbreak that fuels a rivalry for generations.
Absolutely. And finally, for a clash of cultures, a battle between two prestigious programs with distinct identities and a shared history of producing some of the game's greatest players. We have to mention USC versus Notre Dame.
This rivalry dates back to 1926 and has produced iconic moments like the Bush Push in 2005,
Oh, yeah.
when Reggie Bush helped push quarterback Matt Leinart into the end zone for a controversial game-winning touchdown.
Yeah, that was a classic.
It's a rivalry that transcends regional boundaries, capturing the attention of fans nationwide.
For sure.
You've got the Trojans of Southern California representing the glitz and glamour of Hollywood,
Right.
and the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame embodying Midwestern tradition and academic excellence. It's a clash of styles, a battle of ideologies, and always a must-watch game.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So there you have it. A whirlwind tour of some of the most intense, passionate, and historically significant rivalries in college football.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. Hopefully this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for the stories, the moments, and the traditions that make these matchups so special.
Yeah, and remember, these rivalries are always evolving, always creating new chapters in their ongoing sagas.
So the next time you watch one of these games, take a moment to appreciate the history, the passion, and the traditions that make these rivalries so much more than just a game.
Because at the end of the day, it's about the stories we tell, the memories we create, and the shared experience of being part of something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's what makes college football so special.